Hello family, enjoy this relaxing moment with Charm Stories. Remember to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comment section. Also generously hit the like button cause it means the world to us. Please sit back, relax and enjoy as we dive into the story. Lila had always been the backbone of her household, the one holding everything together. Even when her life felt as though it were teetering on the edge of chaos, she never let her two children, Ellie and Ryan, sense the turmoil beneath her calm demeanor. From the moment Ellie was born 10 years ago, Lila knew she would do whatever it took to provide a nurturing environment, no matter how tough her circumstances became. Ryan came along 3 years later, a sweet boy who idolized his older sister and clung to his mother like a shadow. Standing in the kitchen of their modest suburban home, Lila glanced at the calendar pinned to the fridge. It was early December, and every red circle she had drawn around a date represented a shift she had worked late into the night. She worked part-time at a local grocery store in the mornings and cleaned offices in the evenings to make ends meet. She was always exhausted, but in spite of that, her heart brimmed with excitement, because this year, she had finally managed to set aside a chunk of savings for a special Christmas getaway. She intended to surprise the children with a trip to a cozy winter cabin tucked away in the snowy mountains. Her eyes wandered to the photograph taped beside the calendar. It was a picture of her husband, Victor, standing beside her and the kids at a holiday gathering the previous year. Ellie and Ryan looked so happy, their cheeks flushed from the cold, while Victor and Lila wore half-smiles. She remembered that day all too well. Victor had seemed detached even then. Yet she held on to the hope that this Christmas might mend the frayed edges of their family life, offering them a renewed sense of unity. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and hummed, "Silent Night," as she checked the fridge for groceries. Money was tight, but everything was planned out. She'd prepared a strict budget that would allow for both day-to-day necessities and the cabin rental. The excitement she felt wasn't just about the snowfall or the cabin's festive allure. It was the promise of a family bond reignited, a magical holiday memory that could outshine all the stress they'd experienced throughout the year. That afternoon, while Ryan practiced drawing snowmen at the dining table and Ellie worked on a gingerbread house for a school project, Lila decided it was time to share her enthusiasm with Victor. It had been weeks since they had any meaningful conversation. Their encounters usually ended with brief words about the kids or money. For some reason, he seemed to be avoiding her. Still, Lila clung to the belief that the holiday spirit might soften his distance. When Victor finally walked through the front door after work, he unceremoniously dropped his briefcase by the entrance. His eyes were set on his phone, fingers tapping away at a text. He didn't glance up when Lila greeted him. She put on a bright smile and followed him into the living room. "Victor, can we talk for a moment?" she asked, trying to inject as much warmth into her voice as possible. He let out a small sigh, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Sure, but make it quick. I'm beat." Undeterred, Lila perched on the edge of the couch and began. "So, I've been saving up all year. Skipped a few things, cut corners where we could." She paused, scanning his face for any sign of interest, but he appeared more exhausted than anything else. "Anyway, I was hoping we could do something special with the kids this Christmas. A trip. Maybe a few days in the mountains. There's a lovely cabin I found. It's cozy, with a fireplace and nearby slopes where the kids could go tubing." For a second, Victor's eyes flickered with what looked like curiosity, but it was gone in an instant. "How much is that going to cost?" he asked abruptly. Lila's stomach tightened. She had expected some initial resistance, but the question still stung. "I've calculated it. It's not outrageous. I've been setting aside money in a separate account, so it won't touch our main funds." He rolled his eyes and sank deeper into the couch cushions. "If you think it's a good idea and you're footing the bill, I suppose I can't stop you," he said, his tone indifferent. "But I'm swamped with work. Don't expect me to be around too often." Lila's heart sank. There was no enthusiasm, no spark of joy that she had hoped to see in her husband's eyes. It felt like she was pulling him into a plan that he had zero interest in. Still, she pressed on, willing to extend the olive branch. "We could plan the dates around your schedule," she offered softly. "Maybe you could take a few days off?" Victor frowned. "I'll see what I can do, but don't get your hopes up. This time of year is a nightmare at the office." He stood up and walked to the kitchen, effectively ending the conversation. Lila remained on the couch, alone with her thoughts. She was disappointed, but not surprised. Over the last few months, maybe even the last year, Victor had grown distant. She'd noticed him disappearing for hours, claiming he had work dinners or urgent meetings. Their conversations were clipped, and his patience with the kids had worn thin. But she dismissed her worries for the moment. Lila told herself that perhaps all families went through rough patches. Maybe a few days of holiday magic in the mountains, watching the snowfall and sipping hot cocoa by the fire, might thaw the chill between them. Determined to give her kids the best holiday ever, she silently vowed not to let Victor's disinterest spoil her plans. That night, she retreated to her bedroom, closed the door, and logged into her laptop to finalize the cabin booking. As she clicked the Reserve Now button, she pictured Ellie and Ryan squealing with excitement once they realized they would be spending Christmas up in the snowy hills. The image filled her chest with warmth. She momentarily pushed away her concerns about Victor's odd behavior. "Everything will work out," she murmured under her breath. "It has to." It was a simple wish, but one laden with the hopes and dreams of a mother who only wanted her family to feel the togetherness and joy that Christmas could bring. Despite her husband's apparent indifference, Lila let herself dream of a truly perfect Christmas, one that might restore the tenderness that had once graced their marriage. Unbeknownst to her, that simple aspiration would set the stage for life-altering discoveries, heartbreak, and ultimately, a chance at a better future than she could have imagined. A week flew by, and with every passing day, Lila busied herself at work, crossing tasks off her never-ending to-do list. In rare moments of respite, she allowed herself to indulge in images of the cabin, a quintessential wooden lodge nestled at the base of a mountain, where strings of twinkling lights illuminated the porch. She imagined Ellie and Ryan building a snowman on the front lawn, and a soft glow emanating from a roaring fireplace in the living room. She tried to share these pleasant visions with Victor. However, each time she brought up the trip, he either mumbled a non-committal response or claimed he was too preoccupied with the demands of his job. His dismissive attitude was beginning to wear on her, but she kept reminding herself that her focus should remain on the kids. If Victor wanted to be an active part of their holiday, he would make the effort. But there was something else, something lingering beneath the surface that gnawed at her intuitions. He was more than just busy. He was being secretive. Nearly every evening, Victor had a reason to leave the house, citing work dinners or emergency client calls. When he was home, his phone buzzed incessantly with text messages, and he'd step out of the room to answer them. One crisp December evening, Lila was folding laundry in the living room when Victor came downstairs in a dark suit, fiddling with his tie in the mirror by the front door. "Another work event?" she asked, trying not to sound accusatory. He nodded, not meeting her gaze. "Yeah, it's a business dinner I can't skip." His tone was curt, and he kept checking the time on his watch. Lila wanted to probe further, to ask whom he was meeting, if there was any chance he might be home early, or if he could bring the kids along for a quick holiday dessert afterward. Instead, she swallowed her questions, deciding to give him the benefit of the doubt. "All right," she said softly, returning to her laundry. "Let me know if you'll be late." He gave a brief nod, slipped on his shoes, and left without so much as a goodbye. As the door clicked shut, a wave of unease washed over Lila. In the past, Victor would invite her to these dinners, or at least mention the names of people he was meeting. Now, he volunteered no information. She tried to shake off her suspicions, attributing them to holiday stress. The next day, Lila found a moment to confide in her friend, Marisol, who worked with her at the grocery store. During their lunch break, the two women huddled in a corner of the break room, sipping lukewarm coffee and nibbling on stale vending machine snacks. Marisol offered a sympathetic frown. "He's been acting distant for a while now, hasn't he?" Lila nodded, stirring her coffee. "He has. I'm hoping this Christmas trip will help. Maybe he's just overwhelmed with the year-end rush at work." Marisol shrugged. "It could be that. Or maybe he's dealing with something personal he's not comfortable sharing yet." She reached out to pat Lila's hand. "Have you asked him directly?" "I've tried," Lila replied, her voice trembling slightly. "He always gives me vague answers. He barely looks me in the eye." Marisol. "I've never felt so shut out in my own marriage." Marisol sighed. "I know you, Lila. You'll handle this with grace. But be careful. If your gut is telling you something is off, Trust it. That evening, when Lila returned home, she found the house eerily silent. Ellie was in her bedroom, reading a fairy tale, and Ryan was sprawled on the living room floor drawing Christmas trees. Victor was nowhere to be seen. Lila's heart sank as she checked her phone and saw no messages from him. She called, only to be sent straight to voicemail. She cooked dinner in a solemn hush, trying her best to engage the kids in cheerful conversation about the upcoming trip. "Mom, do you think there'll be a big Christmas tree at the cabin?" Ellie asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "There might be," Lila replied, smiling gently. "But we can always bring our own decorations to make it feel like home. I was thinking we could string popcorn garlands together, hang ornaments, and even set up stockings by the fireplace." Ryan giggled. "I can't wait to see a real fireplace. The one we have is fake, and it's not as warm." He sketched a quick fireplace beside his Christmas tree, tiny flames licking up the edges of the drawing. It warmed Lila's heart to see their excitement, but there was a persistent, nagging concern at the back of her mind. Where was Victor? Why had he pulled away? Hours later, Victor returned. The kids were already in bed, and Lila sat in the living room, going through her daily finances on her laptop. She spotted him from the corner of her eye as he entered, but she kept typing, determined not to appear too eager or desperate for answers. He slipped out of his coat and moved to stand behind her. "Working on something?" he asked. She noted his strained tone. "Just checking our expenses," she replied, forcing a small smile. "I'm trying to ensure the Christmas trip is fully covered." He nodded without comment, then headed upstairs to their bedroom. Lila closed her laptop with a sigh and followed. She found him sitting on the edge of the bed, removing his cufflinks with methodical care. "How was your night?" she ventured. "Fine," he said curtly. "Just a bunch of clients talking about the same old nonsense." "You would have been bored." She suppressed the urge to pry for more details. "Well, thanks for working hard," she offered, trying to remain supportive. "I know it's exhausting." Victor shrugged and stood, tossing the cufflinks on the nightstand. "It's whatever." As he turned away, Lila caught a faint whiff of an unfamiliar perfume lingering on his suit jacket. It didn't smell like any cologne or aftershave he usually wore. It had a floral sweetness. She felt her chest tighten, a swirl of confusion mingling with a stab of jealousy. Was this part of her imagination, or was it real? She decided to wait, to see if there was a reasonable explanation. But the following days only heightened her concerns. Victor left earlier in the mornings, came back later, and was even more distant at home. The faint, floral scent that had clung to him once or twice became a recurring presence. He spent most of his evenings glued to his phone, texting someone Lila didn't know. One particularly chilly night, Victor stepped outside to take yet another call. Lila found herself peering through the kitchen window, watching him pace in the yard, phone pressed to his ear. Though she couldn't hear his words, the way he looked around anxiously, as though afraid of being overheard, made her heart pound. Those cracks in the ice, his secretive behavior, the floral scent on his clothes, the endless calls, were impossible to ignore any longer. She tried to maintain the holiday spirit for Ellie and Ryan, but a deep dread continued to grow inside her. Was Victor just overworked? Or was he hiding something far more serious? Lila clung to the hope that the family trip to the cabin might soothe his inexplicable restlessness. Perhaps once they were far away from the demands of his job, his mood would lighten and the old Victor, the one she fell in love with, would re-emerge. She tried to banish her darkest suspicions, telling herself that soon they would all be together in a snowy wonderland, roasting marshmallows, playing board games, and sipping hot cocoa by the fire. But in the quiet recesses of her mind, doubt was taking hold. The foundation of her marriage felt more fragile than ever, and the chill of that reality was more biting than any winter wind. The days inched closer to Christmas, and the excitement in the house grew, at least for Ellie and Ryan. Lila's heart ached at Victor's unwavering disinterest, but she did her best to keep the holiday spirit alive for the children. She had never been one to wallow. Action was her default, so she packed the kids' suitcases in secret, adding touches of festive flair, a small tin of hot cocoa mix, matching reindeer pajamas, and a Santa hat for each. It was a Wednesday morning when everything unraveled. Lila woke early to head to her job at the grocery store, intending to deposit one last check into her special Christmas trip account on her way there. As she typed her password into her mobile banking app, her blood turned to ice. The balance, which should have been comfortably enough to cover the cabin rental, was nearly zero. Her heart pounded, and her fingers trembled as she navigated to the transaction history. A wave of panic flared in her chest. The recent activity showed a large transfer, several $1,000s, from her special account to another account titled Victor S. She blinked in disbelief, certain she must be reading it incorrectly. She dialed the bank's customer service line, barely able to contain her anxiety. After a few interminable minutes on hold, a representative confirmed her worst fear. The funds had been transferred the previous night. The recipient's account belonged to Victor. Lila's voice shook. But how? I never authorized this transfer. Are you sure it was him? Yes, ma'am, the customer service representative said apologetically. The request was made using your joint access credentials. Since it's a joint account with your husband, we're unable to reverse the transaction without his approval. Shock gave way to anger. Lila ended the call and immediately dialed Victor. It went straight to voicemail on the first ring. She tried again, her stomach twisting in knots. No answer. She typed a hurried text. Victor, please call me ASAP. The money for the cabin is gone. Did you move it? I need an explanation. In the next few hours, she balanced her job responsibilities with frantic attempts to reach Victor. Each time her phone buzzed, her heart lurched, hoping it was him with a rational explanation. But he neither called nor texted back. Instead, all she received was a short, cold message just after lunch. This trip isn't happening. Stop wasting money on nonsense. The impact of those words felt like a physical blow. Lila dropped her phone onto the desk in the break room, tears welling in her eyes. She dashed into the restroom for a moment of privacy, leaning against the wall as she tried to steady her breath. Her mind raced. Why would he do this? Where had he gone with the money? Why not at least discuss it with her first? Countless questions swirled, but no answers were forthcoming. She managed to force herself through the remainder of her shift, praying that a face-to-face conversation with Victor that evening might shed light on the situation. When she arrived home, however, the house was dark. Ellie and Ryan were at a neighbor's, happily coloring Christmas cards, under the neighbor's friendly supervision since Lila had asked for help during her late shift. Victor was nowhere to be found. Not so much as a note in the kitchen or a text explaining his whereabouts. Desperate for clarity, she dialed his number repeatedly, but each call went to voicemail. An hour later, she heard the front door creak open. Lila rushed out of the kitchen, expecting to see Victor. Instead, she found only Ellie and Ryan, giggling with a handful of homemade Christmas cards in their arms. Their neighbor, Mrs. Gilmore, offered a kind wave from the porch. Thanks for watching them, Lila told her, mustering a tight smile. I really appreciate it. Anytime, Mrs. Gilmore replied gently, noticing the strain in Lila's eyes. If you need anything, just holler. Once the kids were inside, Lila tried to maintain a calm facade. So, how was it at Mrs. Gilmore's? She asked, collecting their jackets. Ellie beamed. We made cards for Santa. And Ryan drew a huge sleigh with reindeers. It was so fun. That's wonderful, Lila said, forcing a wide smile. She didn't want them to feel the tension emanating from her. As she helped them get ready for bed, her phone vibrated again. She checked the screen, her stomach flipping in dread, hoping it might be Victor finally willing to talk. But there was no text from him, only an automated reminder about an overdue credit card bill. After tucking the children in, Lila retreated to the living room. She sank into the couch, hands clasped tight, mind swirling with confusion and worry. Why would Victor sabotage the family trip, especially one she'd been saving for all year? It was heartbreakingly obvious he had no interest in spending the holidays with them, but to actively ensure the trip couldn't happen was cruel. At midnight, Lila's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. She lunged for it, hopeful, only to find another text from Victor, shorter and colder than the last. Don't call me. We'll talk when I'm ready. No hello. No I'm sorry. Nothing. Lila's eyes stung with tears. She managed to type a single reply. We need to discuss this in person, before tossing her phone aside. Sleep was impossible, so she sat up, trembling with a mix of anger, betrayal, and despair. She forced herself to think practically. The cabin rental needed its final payment in 2 days, or they'd lose the reservation. She had no way to access the stolen funds. Without that money, the dream trip she had orchestrated would vanish. Ellie and Ryan had been so excited, the thought of disappointing them sliced straight to her heart. Yet, what choice did she have? The money was gone, stolen by the very man who was supposed to be her partner in providing for their family. She stared at the Christmas tree's tiny lights twinkling in the corner, each bulb reflecting in her tear-filled eyes, and felt an overwhelming sense of loss, of not just the trip, but of the trust she once had in her husband. Throughout the dark hours, she hovered between anger and sorrow. By morning, one thing was certain: she could no longer ignore Victor's actions. Whatever reason he had, it didn't justify draining her account without warning, nor the cold messages that followed. She vowed to confront him, to demand the truth. But that moment of reckoning would have to wait, because Victor was nowhere to be found. His phone calls went unanswered, his side of the closet remained untouched, and even his office line led her to a dismissive receptionist stating he was out of the office on personal business. It was as though her husband had simply vanished, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a shattered family holiday. With the children asleep upstairs and the lights of the Christmas tree glowing softly, Lila felt more alone than ever. Even so, she pressed a hand against her chest, steadying herself. For Ellie and Ryan, she would remain strong. Somehow, someway, she would salvage the Christmas they deserved, no matter the cost. In the days that followed, Lila slipped into a routine of carefully chosen words and veiled excuses to keep Ellie and Ryan from worrying. Whenever they asked about Victor, she spoke in gentle, reassuring tones, claiming he was working really hard and would explain everything soon. Deep down, she feared that her own faith in these words was as fragile as a snowflake in the sun. Her patience eventually wore thin. After repeated calls and texts yielded no progress, she made the painful decision to go through Victor's belongings in search of any clue to his sudden behavior. She cringed at the thought. It felt like an invasion of privacy. But she also reasoned that privacy went both ways, and he had entirely disregarded hers by emptying her savings without a word. One chilly afternoon, she found herself standing in their bedroom, rummaging through his desk drawers. She discovered nothing of note, just a few old receipts, business cards, and scattered pens. Next, she turned her attention to Victor's briefcase, which he had carelessly left behind on the floor. Her pulse raced as she unlatched it, half expecting to find something incriminating. Inside was a pile of documents. At first glance, they looked like dull work contracts and spreadsheets. But tucked among them, she found receipts for extravagant purchases, high-end restaurants she had never set foot in, designer handbags and jewelry far beyond her own means, and floral deliveries addressed to someone named Caroline. Lila's breath caught in her throat. Who was Caroline? Why was Victor buying her such expensive gifts? A nauseating sensation twisted in her stomach as realization began to set in. Could it be that Victor was involved with another woman? She felt an overwhelming combination of anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. Summoning the courage to continue, she examined more receipts, each confirming the same suspicion. These were personal expenditures, not business-related. Her trembling hands held a receipt for a weekend at a luxury spa resort. The name Victor S. was right there, along with a second guest labeled Caroline S., clearly implying a shared room. She felt as though her entire world had been flipped upside down. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she fought them back. It was almost surreal. She had known Victor for over a decade, watched him cradle their newborn children, leaned on him during tough times, even if that reliance was mostly emotional. Now, all of that seemed meaningless, overshadowed by a betrayal so profound it was hard to fathom. A sudden rage clenched her heart. She remembered the floral scent clinging to his suits, the late-night calls, and his cold disregard for her attempts at reconnecting. It all made sense now in a devastating, gut-wrenching way. She rose from the floor, gripping the receipts in one hand. She paced the room, tears threatening to spill. Mixed in with her sorrow was a fierce indignation. He had not only used the money she'd saved for the children's holiday trip, but he had lavished it on another woman. How could he be so callous? The sound of small footsteps in the hallway made her freeze. Quickly, she locked away the receipts in a closet drawer, not wanting Ellie or Ryan to see her in this state. A knock followed, and Ellie's voice drifted through the door. "Mom, are you in there? Ryan and I want to make cookies. We can't find the cookie cutters." Lila inhaled sharply, wiped her eyes, and tried to steady her voice. "I'll be right out, sweetheart." "Okay," Ellie said, her voice fading as she scampered away. Lila composed herself as best she could. The kids needed her, especially now. There would be time later to confront Victor, to demand an explanation for this treachery. For now, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had to retain her focus on Ellie and Ryan. They were innocent, blissfully unaware of the storm swirling beneath the surface. She exited the bedroom, wearing a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. As the aroma of fresh cookie dough wafted from the kitchen, Lila steeled herself for the role she was forced to play: the reliable parent, the steadfast presence in their young lives. Inside, she was a seething ball of pain and betrayal, but she buried it beneath a veneer of normalcy. Later that evening, when the children were fast asleep, Lila let her mask slip. She retreated to the living room, where the glow of Christmas lights danced against the walls. There, she allowed herself to cry, silent tears that she refused to let overshadow her presence with the kids. Each tear carried a piece of the dream she once had, the dream of a warm, united family, building Christmas traditions that would stand the test of time. With each sob, she felt that dream being stripped away, replaced by a grim reality. Victor had chosen another woman, a younger woman at that. He had betrayed not only Lila, but Ellie and Ryan too. The money that was supposed to bring joy to their family had funded someone else's pleasure. By the time her tears had dried, the anger had taken root again, stronger than before. She resolved that Victor's betrayal would not rob Ellie and Ryan of their holiday memories. She might be left with nothing but a handful of dollars in her checking account, but she refused to let his selfish actions define her children's Christmas. Sitting on the couch, she drew up a mental plan. She would sell whatever she could spare, unworn clothes and used appliances, maybe even some of her precious jewelry. She would pick up extra shifts, no matter how exhausted she felt. The question of whether the cabin rental was still salvageable tore at her, but she had to try. She glanced at the clock on the wall, almost midnight. Summoning her courage, she tried calling Victor one last time. As expected, the call went directly to voicemail. She didn't bother leaving a message. Instead, she sent a text. "I know about Caroline. I found the receipts. You took our Christmas money for her. Be prepared to talk about it. The children and I deserve answers." Then, with trembling hands, she turned off her phone. She needed to rest, if only for a few hours, before returning to her day jobs. Sleep was elusive, her mind racing with the horrifying truth she had uncovered. She lay awake, gazing at the flickering glow of the Christmas tree. It was a silent night outside, snow drifting in gentle flurries, but within her, a tempest raged. The truth hurt more than she had ever imagined possible. Yet, beneath the anguish, a stubborn spark of resolve began to burn. She was a mother first, and nothing would stop her from preserving the holiday cheer for Ellie and Ryan. Victor might have tried to extinguish her plans, but she refused to let him succeed. The morning after her discovery, Lila got up before dawn. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her body felt leaden with exhaustion. Yet she forced herself to put on her warm coat and head to her first job. Throughout the morning shift of the grocery store, she wore a polite smile and helped customers find the perfect holiday ingredients for their festive meals. Inside, her thoughts were far from the holiday spirit. She kept recalling the receipts with Caroline's name, the lavish gifts, and Victor's smug, cold texts. A million questions plagued her, but none of them mattered as much as ensuring Ellie and Ryan's happiness. If she let herself fall apart, her children would suffer even more. During her lunch break, Marisol found her in the break room, hunched over her phone as she researched how to pick up extra gigs during the holiday season. "Hey, you all right?" Marisol asked, her brow creased with concern. Lila mustered a thin smile. "I'm trying to be," she replied, then paused, wondering if she should confide the latest developments. Marisol had always been supportive, but Lila was embarrassed and heartbroken. With a sigh, she decided the weight was too much to bear alone. She relayed everything: the drained account, the receipts for lavish gifts, and the cruel text messages from Victor. Marisol's face fell, and she shook her head in disbelief. "That's horrible," Marisol whispered. "I'm so sorry, Lila. You don't deserve this." Lila clenched her jaw, determined not to cry again. "It feels surreal. But I have to keep it together. I'm trying to find extra work. I can't let the kids miss out on Christmas because of his betrayal." Marisol nodded supportively. "I'll keep my ears open. Sometimes the store needs extra help for overnight stocking. It's grueling work, but it pays time and a half during the holidays." Her heart lifting a notch, Lila thanked her friend. "If that's an option, I'll do it. It's not about me anymore. It's about giving my children something to look forward to." When her shift ended, Lila picked the kids up from school, greeting them with an affectionate hug. Ellie excitedly babbled about a holiday play at school, while Ryan waved a drawing of Santa and his reindeer. Their unbridled enthusiasm for the season reminded Lila of why she had to push forward. That evening, once the kids had finished their homework and were busy watching a holiday movie, Lila disappeared into her bedroom. She began sorting through her closet and drawers, pulling out items she could sell. There were clothes she hadn't worn in years, a few pairs of shoes still in their boxes, and jewelry, some from Victor, ironically enough, tucked in the back of a drawer. She opened a small velvet box, revealing a slender gold bracelet Victor had given her on their 8th wedding anniversary. Her fingers traced the delicate chain, recalling how she had once cherished this symbol of their love. Now, it felt tainted, a reminder of empty promises. Her throat tightened, but she steeled herself, placed the bracelet in a pile marked for sale, and closed the box. By the time she was done, she had gathered 2 full boxes of items she planned to sell or pawn. It wasn't an ideal solution, but it was a start. She took photos and posted them on a local online marketplace, setting firm but fair prices in hopes of a quick sale. Over the next few days, she juggled her schedule like an acrobat, picking up any extra shifts she could find. At the grocery store, she agreed to cover late-night stocking shelves. On weekends, she took on small cleaning gigs for local businesses. Marisol introduced her to a woman who needed help catering a Christmas party, so Lila spent her Saturday evening washing dishes and slicing fruit trays. By Sunday night, her muscles ached, and her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but she managed to pocket a small stack of extra cash. Her efforts paid off in small increments. The local marketplace listings slowly led to sales, netting her enough to at least consider paying the cabin's final invoice. She quickly emailed the cabin's owner, explaining a family emergency had delayed her final payment, and she promised to send the money by the following week. The owner, sympathetic to holiday hardships, agreed to give her a short grace period. Despite the glimmer of hope, the emotional toll was immense. Lila hadn't heard from Victor in days, and each text she sent went unanswered. She was starting to suspect he had blocked her number. When she finally got through to his office line, his secretary claimed he was traveling on business, further fueling the flames of her anger and determination. One day, Ellie asked quietly, "Mom, is Dad mad at us? Did we do something wrong?" Lila's chest tightened. She knelt beside her daughter and held her gently. "No, sweetheart," she whispered, stroking Ellie's hair. "You and Ryan haven't done anything wrong. Dad is he's busy right now. Grown-up stuff. It has nothing to do with you." Ellie's eyes glistened. "I miss him." Lila felt tears prick her own eyes. "I know. I miss him too," she lied, uncertain if what she felt was really missing him or missing the version of him she once knew. She pressed a kiss to Ellie's forehead, silently vowing to find a way to shield them from the worst of this turmoil. As the week wore on, Lila's rigorous efforts began to bear fruit. Her online sales brought in just enough money to pay the cabin rental fee, albeit 2 days late. She breathed a sigh of relief when the cabin owner confirmed the booking. It wouldn't be the extravagant trip she had once envisioned, but at least she and the children would still have the chance to experience a snowy Christmas escape. Any illusions of an ideal family celebration, however, were shattered. She had already accepted that Victor would not be joining them, even if he returned home. Yet, the more she pushed forward, the more her resolve hardened. Yes, she was heartbroken and furious at her husband's betrayal. But her love for Ellie and Ryan was far more potent than her pain. On a rare afternoon off, she sat down with both children on the living room couch. "So," she said with a conspiratorial smile, "I've been working really hard to make sure we can still go on a trip for Christmas. It's going to be up in the mountains, with snow, a real fireplace, and plenty of holiday cheer." Ellie's eyes widened in astonishment. "Wait, we're still going?" Ryan bounced in excitement, nearly toppling off the couch. "Are you serious, Mom?" The joy in their voices was like a salve over Lila's wounded heart. She nodded, smiling through misty eyes. "Absolutely. It'll be different than I originally planned, but I promise you, we will have an amazing time." Ellie threw her arms around her mother's neck, her laughter filling the room. Ryan joined the embrace, squishing the three of them together in a tight hug. In that moment, Lila felt renewed, her heartbreak overshadowed by love and gratitude for her children. No matter the cost to her pride or her bank account, she would see to it that they experienced the magic of Christmas. Victor's betrayal might have stolen their savings, but it could never steal her determination to fight for her family's happiness. Yet there remained a lingering thought: eventually, she would have to face Victor. He owed her an explanation, if not for her sake, then for Ellie and Ryan's. And when that day came, she would no longer be the same woman. Meek, trusting, and blindly hopeful. She was forging a new strength within herself, and nothing would stop her from protecting her children's joy. A few days before Christmas, Lila discovered Victor's whereabouts when one of Marisol's acquaintances mentioned seeing him frequent a high-rise downtown office building, far from his usual corporate location. Determined to confront him, Lila donned a warm coat, left Ellie and Ryan in Marisol's care, and drove into the city. Her nerves jangled as she rode the elevator to the 20th floor. The plush carpeting and softly lit corridors screamed opulence, a stark contrast to the worn floors and fluorescent lights at the grocery store where she worked. She approached the receptionist's desk, palms clammy, and asked for Victor. The receptionist, a young man with perfectly styled hair, gave her a polite but dubious glance. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm his wife," Lila said, summoning as much authority as she could muster. "It's important." He hesitated, eyes flickering to her worn coat and scuffed boots. Lila felt the heat of indignation creep up her neck. Was she being judged by her appearance? She clenched her jaw, ready to insist on seeing her husband, when the receptionist reached for the phone. Within minutes, Victor appeared at the reception area, jaw tight and eyes brimming with annoyance. He wore a sleek suit and tie, a stark contrast to Lila's simple attire. She felt an immediate wave of anger at the sight of him, standing there as if he had done nothing wrong. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, glancing nervously around the lobby. "We need to talk," Lila said through gritted teeth. "You've been avoiding me, ignoring my calls and texts. I deserve answers." Victor sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "I'm in the middle of something important. Can we do this later?" "No," Lila snapped, her voice echoing off the polished marble walls. She noticed a few people peeking over the tops of their cubicles. "We do this now. You can't hide forever, Victor." He scowled, grabbed her arm, and led her toward a glass-walled conference room. The space was empty, a long table in the center surrounded by leather chairs. Once inside, he closed the door firmly. "What do you want?" he spat, crossing his arms. "I told you, the trip was a waste of money. I needed the funds for—" Lila let out a bitter laugh. "For your affair, you mean?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out the crumpled receipts, tossing them onto the sleek conference table. "Caroline, the spa weekend, the expensive dinners. Don't insult my intelligence anymore." Victor went pale. For a second, his facade faltered. Then he regained his composure, shrugging as though his betrayal was a minor inconvenience. "It's not what you think," he muttered, eyes darting toward the door, as if plotting an escape. Lila's eyes blazed. "Then enlighten me. Because it looks like you've been stealing my savings and spending it on another woman." He stared at her, jaw working. "Okay, fine. Caroline is someone I met through work. We started seeing each other. You and I. Things haven't been good for a long time, Lila. I needed—" "You needed an affair?" she cut in, voice trembling with fury. "I've been busting my back trying to provide for our family. while you threw our money at a mistress?" Victor glowered, leaning forward. "Don't act like you're the perfect spouse. You're always busy with the kids, never paying attention to my needs. Maybe if you had—" "Stop it," she hissed, tears of rage gathering in her eyes. "Don't you dare blame me for your choices." He fell silent, his mouth set in a stubborn line. In that moment, the door to the conference room swung open, and in strutted a woman, young, impeccably dressed, with a sleek hairstyle and a designer bag. Her eyes flicked between Victor and Lila, a smirk curling her glossy lips. "Victor," the woman purred, ignoring Lila's presence. "I was waiting for you at lunch. We have that reservation, remember?" Lila's stomach lurched. So this was Caroline, the woman who had unknowingly stolen Christmas from Ellie and Ryan. She glared at Victor. "Unbelievable. You left your family to spend the holidays with this." Caroline flicked her gaze over Lila, sizing her up with a cool sneer. "You must be the wife," she said dismissively, then addressed Victor. "Do you want me to wait outside?" Victor hesitated, torn between confrontation and saving face. Lila took the choice away from him. "Actually, don't bother," she said loudly, turning to Caroline. "We won't be long. I just have a few things to say to my husband before I leave." Caroline arched an eyebrow but stayed put. That was all the incentive Lila needed. She took a step toward Victor. "You stole my savings," she began, her voice shaking with pent-up anger. "You drained the money I put away for our children. You lied, you cheated, and you never even had the decency to own up to it. You're standing here in your fancy suit, with your new fling, acting like you're too good for the rest of us. But let me tell you something. You're nothing but a coward." Victor's face reddened, and he opened his mouth to retort, but Lila held up a hand. "I'm not done." She jabbed a finger at the receipts on the table. "That money was meant to give Ellie and Ryan a magical Christmas. You and I both know how hard I worked to scrape it together. And you took it. You took it." She swallowed hard, her voice hitching, then forced herself to maintain composure. "You may think you've gotten away with it. But trust me, Victor, this humiliation, your humiliation, won't end here. You walked away from your family, and you did it in the cruelest way possible. Don't bother coming home or asking for forgiveness. Our children deserve better than the father you've chosen to be." Caroline let out a haughty little laugh. "Is that all? Because we have reservations." "Shut up," Lila snapped, surprising even herself with the raw venom in her tone. Caroline stared at her, wide-eyed. "This is between me and him. You're irrelevant." For a moment, a heavy silence descended on the conference room. Victor seemed stunned, torn between rage and embarrassment. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse. "You're making a scene," he said. "Don't forget, this is my place of business." "Your place of business is where you hide from your family," Lila returned, her words echoing sharply. "Believe me, I'm not half as ashamed as you should be." She stepped back, snatching the receipts from the table and stuffing them into her coat pocket. Through the glass walls, she could see several employees pretending not to watch. Whispers and pointed stares were directed at Victor. He was trapped in a public display of his own wrongdoing, and the humiliation was etched on his face. Knowing she had said everything she needed to say, Lila turned on her heel and marched out of the conference room. Behind her, she heard Caroline scolding Victor for letting the situation spiral. His muffled apologies and excuses were of no interest to Lila anymore. By the time she reached the elevator, adrenaline coursed through her veins, leaving her hands trembling. As the doors slid shut, she felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. She had just torched what remained of their marriage in front of his colleagues. There was no going back. But a deeper realization settled in her heart. She was free. No more secrets, no more illusions, and no more betrayal. She was leaving with her head held high, determined to protect her children from any further pain Victor might inflict. The next step of her journey would be about healing, finding independence, and proving to Ellie and Ryan that love and resilience could conquer betrayal. Despite the turmoil, Lila refused to let Victor's betrayal destroy her children's Christmas. The very next day, she loaded Ellie and Ryan into her aging sedan, stuffing the trunk with suitcases, winter coats, and a small box of festive decorations. It was early morning, and a pale December sun peeked over the horizon. Her heart felt heavy with lingering hurt, but she drew strength from the laughter bubbling in the back seat. The drive to the cabin took several hours. Snow-laden pine trees lined the winding mountain road, and every so often, Lila would point out frosty vistas to Ellie and Ryan, marveling at the icicles hanging from the branches. Occasionally, her thoughts drifted back to Victor's stunned expression during her confrontation. While she still felt pangs of grief, she also felt an intense sense of relief knowing she had finally stood up for herself. By midday, they arrived at the rental cabin, an old, wood-framed lodge perched near a frozen lake. Smoke curled from the chimney, and icicles glimmered along the eaves. Ellie gasped in delight. "It's perfect, Mom. Look at all this snow." Ryan pressed his nose against the car window, eyes wide. "Can we go sledding now?" "Let's bring our bags in first," Lila laughed, switching off the engine. "Then we can do whatever you want." They trudged through the snow, leaving footprints behind them. Inside, the cabin was modest but cozy. The living room featured a stone fireplace, a worn plaid couch, and a threadbare rug, but it was charming in its simplicity. The kitchen, though small, had everything they needed. As Lila helped the kids remove their boots and coats, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Despite all the heartbreak, she was here, against all odds, ready to create joyful memories with her children. She quickly unpacked the groceries she had brought from home: hot cocoa mix, marshmallows, and ingredients for simple winter meals. After they'd settled in, Ellie and Ryan's excitement spilled over. They begged to explore the area around the cabin. Lila pulled on her thickest boots, helped the children into hats and gloves, and stepped outside. The afternoon sun turned the snow a dazzling white. They discovered a small shed containing sleds, courtesy of the cabin's owner. Within minutes, Ellie and Ryan were racing down gentle slopes behind the cabin, squealing in delight. Lila watched them, a grin stretching across her face. She briefly recalled how close she had come to losing this dream, how Victor's betrayal had nearly stolen this moment from her kids. Pride and relief welled within her, mingling with a tinge of bittersweet sorrow. At dusk, the sky blushed with shades of pink and orange. Lila called the children in for dinner, simple tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. They sat on the couch afterward, sipping hot cocoa by the fire. The flickering glow of the flames danced in Ellie's wide eyes. "Mom, this is the best Christmas ever," she declared. Lila felt tears prickle at the corners of her eyes, but this time they were tears of happiness. "I'm glad you think so, sweetheart." She glanced at Ryan, who was fighting to keep his eyes open. Gently, she carried Ryan upstairs and tucked him into a cozy twin bed. Ellie, a bit older, helped arrange a few holiday decorations around the fireplace, like the miniature stockings she had brought from home and a small string of colored lights. The results were modest, but to Lila, it was beautiful. Once Ellie had gone to bed, Lila sat alone by the fire, nursing a mug of cocoa. Outside, snow swirled in the pale moonlight, adding a layer of hush to the world. She thought about Victor. She wondered if he felt any remorse or even the slightest twinge of guilt for robbing their children of a father's presence during Christmas. As much as she hated to admit it, part of her still felt a pang of sadness. There had been a time when she believed he would share these magical moments with them. Yet, she refused to dwell on that sorrow for long. The reality was harsh, but she had made her choice, to move forward, for both herself and her children. She set the empty mug on the coffee table, inhaled the comforting scent of burning wood, and reminded herself, "We are here. We are making memories. Nothing can take that away now." The next day dawned bright and chilly. Lila woke to the sound of Ryan's hushed giggles and Ellie's excited whispers. She found them peering out the window at a cluster of deer picking their way across the snowy clearing. Grinning, she snapped a few photos, determined to preserve every wonder-filled moment. They spent the morning building a snowman outside the cabin. Ellie insisted on using her scarf to wrap around its neck, while Ryan found 2 sticks for arms. Lila rummaged through the cabin's small pantry and found some spare carrots. She handed one to Ryan, who gleefully stuck it into the snowman's face for a nose. When the snowman was complete, they all stood back to admire their handiwork. It was lopsided, with pebbles for eyes and a crooked smile, but Ellie declared it the best snowman ever. Lila snapped another photo, capturing the children's laughter and the radiant mountain backdrop. In the afternoon, Lila brewed a pot of hot chocolate, and they warmed themselves by the fireplace, flipping through a stack of old children's books she found on a cabin shelf. Ellie read to Ryan, her voice animated as she recounted tales of snow queens and magical forests. As the sun began to set, they decided to roast marshmallows. Lila found some skewers in a kitchen drawer, and soon the sweet aroma of toasting sugar filled the air. Ellie's face was smudged with sticky marshmallow goo, and Ryan giggled at the sight, nearly dropping his own skewer in the fire. In that moment, the pain of Victor's betrayal felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the simple joy of being together. Though the cabin wasn't extravagant, though their budget was tight, they had never been richer in love and laughter. Before bedtime, Ellie drew a picture of the three of them standing beside their snowman, labeling it "Best Christmas Trip Ever." She handed it to Lila with a shy smile. "I want you to keep this, Mom, so you'll remember how much fun we had." Tears burned behind Lila's eyes as she accepted the drawing. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered, hugging Ellie close. "I'll treasure it." That night, as she tucked both children in, Lila felt an overwhelming sense of pride. She had fought for this, overcome endless obstacles, and weathered the storm of heartbreak. And here she was, giving her children a holiday experience that would live forever in their memories. Even though the children were enthralled by their snowy adventures, Lila knew life beyond the cabin continued to unfold. After a flurry of texts with Marisol one evening, she discovered that news of her confrontation at Victor's office had spread through his professional network. People whispered about how his wife had exposed his affair in a public showdown, leaving him humiliated. It turned out his mistress, Caroline, had walked away once she realized Victor's finances were no longer secure, especially after Lila reclaimed what little was left of her savings and froze all joint accounts. Rumor had it that Caroline found wealthier prospects, leaving Victor alone. Lila was neither surprised nor sympathetic. She wasn't proud of deriving relief from his misfortune, but she couldn't deny feeling a sense of justice. For the first time, Victor confronted the consequences of his selfish decisions. He had lost the respect of his colleagues, and his tarnished reputation made professional dealings uneasy. As the days slipped by, Lila received a single call from Victor, which she chose to ignore. He left a voicemail saying he wanted to talk, but she wasn't interested. She had said everything necessary during their confrontation. There was no apology or explanation that could erase the hurt he inflicted, or reinstate her trust. While Victor's world fell apart, Lila and the kids thrived in their temporary mountain haven. The final night of their stay in the cabin, they gathered around the fireplace. Ellie, armed with a pack of crayons, drew winter scenes in a notebook, and Ryan curled up beside Lila, fighting sleep. Lila stared into the flickering flames, remembering the painful months leading up to this moment. She felt a quiet sense of victory. They had survived betrayal and heartbreak to find a pocket of peace amid the chaos. Even though they would be heading back to the real world soon, she felt prepared to face whatever came next. After returning from the cabin, the realities of daily life hit quickly. Lila had rent to pay and bills that couldn't be postponed. The money she earned from extra shifts was almost spent, and she needed a more stable solution. Yet, the trip had crystallized something for her. She deserved better than living under the shadow of Victor's broken promises. With renewed determination, she began searching for new job opportunities. She refused to be stuck in positions that barely covered the bills. Despite her insecurities, she dusted off her resume, listing her years of multitasking and management of household budgets as relevant skills. Weeks passed, and she endured countless rejections. Each time, she felt the sting of disappointment, but she pressed on. Her perseverance paid off when she landed an office manager position at a small marketing firm. The salary was modest, but better than what she had earned juggling 2 or 3 lower-paying jobs. More importantly, it had room for growth. As she settled into her new routine, Ellie and Ryan adapted remarkably well. They praised Lila's bravery, bursting with pride whenever she spoke about her new responsibilities. After school, they would do homework in the small break room at her new job on days she had to work late, forging friendships with Lila's understanding coworkers. All the while, Victor made sporadic attempts to reach out, usually through texts or brief voicemails. "We need to talk," or "I miss the kids," or "I'm sorry, let's fix this." Each message chipped away at Lila's anger, But the pain was too raw to consider any path toward reconciliation. She was polite yet firm when telling him that Ellie and Ryan would see him if, and only if, they felt comfortable. As for her, she had no desire to reopen that door. Slowly, Lila felt her self-confidence blossom. She was no longer the exhausted, anxious wife, tiptoeing around Victor's moods. The memory of her triumphant stand at his office buoyed her spirits. She realized she had a reservoir of strength she hadn't known existed, and that strength propelled her forward into each new day. Months passed, and with them came the slow, steady healing of Lila's heart. She navigated single motherhood with resilience, leaning on friends like Marisol and discovering new joys in her independence. Ellie and Ryan thrived under her unwavering love and attention. Their bond grew stronger in the absence of Victor's tension. On weekends, Lila would plan movie nights or picnics in the local park. Occasionally, she splurged on small treats, ice cream after dinner or a trip to a local arcade, because she knew how fleeting childhood could be. Victor, meanwhile, found himself fighting an uphill battle. His finances were depleted, his professional reputation badly tarnished. His attempts to woo Caroline back proved fruitless, and he realized too late that he had thrown away the genuine love of a faithful wife for a fleeting affair. One cool spring afternoon, Victor arrived unannounced at Lila's doorstep. She nearly shut the door in his face, but curiosity nudged her to let him speak. He stood on the porch, disheveled and worn, a far cry from the suave man she once knew. "What do you want?" she asked evenly. "I'm sorry," he blurted, face twisted in remorse. "I messed up. I know that. I want to try again, to fix this. I want to come home." Lila felt a momentary pang of nostalgia for the life they once had. But then she remembered the betrayal, the silent tears, and the heartbreak. She recalled Ellie's worried questions, Ryan's confusion. She recalled the dignity she found within herself on the day she confronted him. "No," she said softly but firmly. "That life is gone, Victor. The children and we're better off now. I'm better off." He stared at her, a mix of desperation and regret flooding his eyes. "I can't believe you won't give me another chance. We have a family." "We had a family," she interrupted gently, stepping out onto the porch. "And you chose to walk away from us for someone else. You drained our savings. You humiliated me, and you devastated our children. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about what we need now, and that's peace." Victor lowered his gaze. He muttered something akin to "I understand," but Lila couldn't be sure. She watched as he turned and walked away, shoulders slumped, realizing that sometimes the bridge you burn can never be rebuilt. Closing the door, Lila released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. A sense of finality settled over her, a gentle acceptance of the past and a hopeful embrace of the future. That evening, she treated Ellie and Ryan to pizza, celebrating yet another milestone in their new life. They laughed around the small dining table, the warm glow of a single overhead light illuminating the family she had fought so hard to protect. She felt free, not in the sense of escaping responsibility, but in stepping into a life where she no longer had to beg for love or walk on eggshells. The next time she gazed at the pictures from their Christmas trip to the cabin, she smiled, remembering how a bitter betrayal transformed into a powerful journey of self-discovery. Her children's laughter filled the house, a house that was now truly a home, buoyed by warmth, respect, and genuine affection. No matter what came next, Lila knew she was strong enough to face it head-on. After all, Christmas might have been the season that unveiled the darkest side of betrayal, but it was also the season that revealed the unbreakable power of a mother's love, and that kind of love could outlast any winter storm. I'm glad you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please go ahead and generously hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating tales like this. We'd love to hear from you. What lessons have you learned from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next story.